Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who, after watching Trick or Treat in 2007, now carries a jack-o'-lantern with him all times that is loaded with bioluminescent fungus gnat larvae. John Levingood.
I mean, after seeing just how bright they are and pitch black when they got them from that cave, like I just had to. But that's based on a real thing.
Yeah.
It's or in pitch black they took some liberties. It was a mix between glowworm larvae, which are related to fireflies, and fungus gnat larvae, which are on the ceilings of caves. I don't even remember what countries, and some of the species are bioluminescent.
Wow.
Totally creepy, like very Halloween creep factor.
And you take 2-liter bottles with you just in case you get stuck in a cave and you need some light, so you can put them in there with it, like an empty 2-liter bottle, like they did in Pitch Black.
Like the lanterns that they made in the Rings of Power show.
Exactly, like the lanterns. Now, John, you know what I was just thinking about with Trick or Treat? I messaged you and I was like, John, we got to talk about this for Halloween. And this movie, I mean, since it had its screenings, it was filmed in 2007, had a bunch of screenings, didn't really get released on DVD until 2009. But you know what's crazy, John, is like, so this movie's a cult classic, but I completely missed it. So I don't know if you remember, but in 2007 I was planning to move to Japan, and then the weekend before I left for Japan, that got canceled. So then I pivoted real quick and I found a job in Korea that left several months later. But then, I was in Korea for a year and I just missed all the buzz about this movie at the film festivals. Ain't It Cool News was championing it. It was getting huge buzz on the convention circuit. It was really building a cult audience, and it was never officially released in theaters because I think they didn't know how to market a movie where a guy is kicking a child in a grave while ripping, smashing his hand with a shovel. But it's kind of crazy. I missed all of this, and I don't think did you know about this movie in 2007, 2008? Like this
I did not, but no. I never had my ear to the stone really for what went on in film festivals until I read about it after the fact in Cinescape or Fangoria magazines.
Oh, okay.
So that was really me. I was very late to being a regular attendee on the internet or Ain't It Cool News, etc. So
I got it.
For me, it was more just sitting in a Barnes and Noble or a Borders with a coffee, getting all the updates I need with a notepad from the Fangoria. I wasn't going to buy because I didn't have a lot of money.
And the Premiere magazines and
right.
Fangoria and all those. And when I got it, so I did the dial-up internet. I remember I watched Donnie Darko in 2001, 2002. Immediately went on dial-up internet to read the Ebert review because I'm like, I need to read about this movie. Like, what happened? But I couldn't find anything. It was just Ebert's review. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I've always just looked for movie facts when they came out, but I missed this movie completely. And I kind of, you know what, John? I kind of had negative feelings about this movie. I feel like I let it sway me because it got a Blu-ray release. It just, back in the day, John, if a movie was released on Blu-ray or just DVD or VHS, you didn't really have the biggest hopes for it. It wasn't. Right. And so for some reason, even though this movie had a stacked cast and I recognized Sam, I just never watched it. And then one time I watched it and I went, wow, why didn't I watch it? It's what, 68 minutes before credits. It's short, it's sweet, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know. But I completely understand why this movie is a cult classic because it's very violent, but it's also very funny. And there is a sense of humor to it. It's left of mainstream for sure. But yet, I don't know, it just breezes by. It has a good time. It kind of it's very earnest. Sam is almost a perfect and memorable Halloween mascot, which was the director Michael Dougherty wanted. But yeah, this is one of these movies I feel like it was tailor-made to be a cult classic, if that makes sense.
Well, and what it has, and I don't know why we don't see this more often, is there are very, very few horror anthologies when you really look at how many, whether they're popular or trendy or whatever horror anthologies that there are in the last, say, since 1980 even. Not that there weren't any before that, but there are very few that have one writer and one director. Or let me rephrase, you could have more than one writer, but what I mean is it's not a series of independent films that are mutually exclusive in their production, writing, direction, and everything.
So you're talking about like comparatively VHS, which is separate anthologies. We're talking Creepshow,
Correct.
which are separate directors. Twilight Zone, separate directors.
It's not Creepshow.
Oh no, actually those are tied. But yeah, so this is an anthology, but it's under the control of one man.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like the better cinematic experiences I've had with horror anthologies are from Tales from the Dark Side, the original Creepshow. Actually, Creepshow 1 and 2. Both of them have, Creepshow was Stephen King and George Romero was the team up for the first Creepshow. Tales from the Dark Side, again, just wonderful, a lot of synthesis. And the other thing is you have consistency even in the production value. So whether or not the stories are super linked beyond their wraparound story, there's consistency in the quality. And then you take that and then you add what perfect synthesis. These aren't just linked in air quotes stories where there's a light link. These three stories all constantly bob and weave. We get updates of all three of them throughout the entire film, including even breaking the timeline a bit to show it in a more interesting way.
It's like Pulp Fiction, but a horror anthology.
Right. And then when it's doing it, it shows you different people's perspectives of the same exact thing. Like our child murdering principal with respect to his
Steven.
crotchety bus driver neighbor.
Yeah. Oh man, Steven he's just pure evil. And then with his son, they're carving pumpkins, but it's a decapitated head. And then he has kids in the grave that he's just hitting with shovels. Like
the kid didn't. He thought the kid was dead.
Yeah.
Mark. He had to make sure.
But this is why this movie's a cult classic, because you and I, John, we're executives, right? Someone goes and makes Trick or Treat, and you and I are like, oh yeah, we got this Trick or Treat movie. It looks good. It's short, not much stuff. Like it looks good. The director went to NYU. Like this will be good. Good cast. And then Dylan Baker starts murdering a child with a shovel for laughs. And then teenagers are slaughtered by little zombies while another girl just, takes off up an elevator. And you're going, oh my gosh, we can't market this. It's so hard to market, but that's why I think it's a cult classic. And that's why I think it's so endearing is it got completely benched of a theatrical release, but then everyone reunited around it by word of mouth. And now it's basically a staple of Halloween. This is a staple of Halloween, Trick or Treat. But it's not one of those cult classics that, it's not very good, but people rallied around. This is a good movie. This movie is tight and it's funny. And I mean, the whole werewolf bit is such a one note gag, but the payoff is so lovely. And as you as a werewolf enthusiast, watching them rip off their skin. You write a lot about werewolves, and actually you want to release like a PDF that's 40 pages about werewolves. Where do these transformations, like how would you rank these transformations amongst other werewolf films?
A lot of people look at transformation scenes the same way that you look for like the thrill of the best death scene in a movie, right? A transformation scene is supposed to be the pièce de résistance of the whole movie, right? In these werewolf movies. The Howling, American Werewolf in London, Ginger Snaps literally made a whole movie out of a transformation scene, right? So these things they're supposed to be super. Tales from the Dark Side, the one when the woman transforms into a gargoyle. These are like the scenes that people keep talking about, even if you forgot everything else about the movie. And this, I don't feel like it has quite that punch, but instead what it has is that you're going to remember that it was different from any other kind of transformation scene that you've seen. And while yes, like you said, almost like leggings or like stockings that they're not going to use again, they're kind of roughly pulling them off, or like a princess's glove / arm sleeve pulling it off. But for me, what makes it awesome is that you start to see the vertebrae protrude, but meanwhile her sister is helping one of her other sisters undress, and she takes her fingernail and she pierces her at the top of her spine and drags it down. And I remember when I first saw the movie, because you just see that for a couple seconds. I thought they had zippers, like it was a bloody costume. But even still, so yeah, it has this very special visual impact. Ginger snaps. The punchline there is that it's the whole movie. It's gradual, right? Almost like The Fly, if you will. So yeah. So again, this isn't the coolest, the most titillating of them, but it's still one of the most interesting transformation scenes, just because they took a different angle. That angle, by the way, when it's like undressing, like taking off your costume, how cheeky.
Yeah, that's a perfect word for this movie, cheeky, right? Because, like you said, they are slipping off their skin like it's like a glove or pants,
leggings, or yes, or boots, right?
It's pretty lovely, and also too, I want to ask you a question: how far, right? How far did Laurie, played by Anna Paquin, throw Steven? Because he falls out of a tree, and then she comes walking from a totally different direction.
Right.
So did she climb up in the tree, have him fall, and then run down? Did he drop what was that, like Plinko? Did he drop down the tree like Plinko as she ran around them to give them a surprise?
Right. I'm inclined to just call this a director pulling a fast one.
Yeah. But in the world, though, what would you think? Do you think she threw him? Or do you think she...
It seemed like he fell straight down.
Yeah.
Like he did. He fell straight down from the tree near where everyone else was, and then Anna Paquin arrives from far away from everyone. Yeah, so it's again though, it seems like the director pulling a fast one.
No, it is
for cinematic flair, right? But yeah, she would have had to have dropped him up there, right, or set him up there knowing he'd eventually fall, and then come down, go far away so that she could make a graceful entrance, a dramatic entrance.
Did she throw him so high that he just fell through the tree completely flat? Does that make if you think about the curve that she threw him, she just threw him up. We're talking at least several hundred feet in the air. Did she throw him several hundred feet in the air? Or do you think, listen, I know it's a fast one, but I just love that either she can take grown men and throw them 300 feet in the air and they land flat, or she tied them in a tree.
We're dealing with a werewolf, right? We're not dealing with a remake or a re-remake of Cat People. But I'd almost like to imagine that, almost like a were-cat, she dragged him up into the tree to maul him a bit, on a branch, like a jaguar with with some kind of hooved animal, like draped over the crux of the branch by the trunk of the tree, and like left him there, like to come back for that snack later after the party, but then like he happened to fall while she was making her dramatic entrance.
Oh man. And even though they killed a lot of innocent men, they actually did the world a favor by killing off Steven, because that dude's a serial killer, John. So it's I wouldn't say it's a net positive, but did you see all the little Easter eggs in here? Did you see the bear? So there was a werewolf in a bear, like a large stuffed koala or bear costume that was holding a decapitated head.
No.
There's so many little I paused it and I went, what is that? There's so many little Easter eggs. And also, too, there's a scene where, in the beginning, when Leslie Bibb is cleaning her thing in the beginning, you see the zombie kids walking through the background. Like, this movie is just so tied together. It's lovely. But that makes me happy, the little Easter eggs.
Oh, because it was late in the night when that happened, actually. Yeah. Right, because it was after Sam got the bus driver.
Oh, man. Yeah, Sam wrestled with the bus driver. He lived, and then the kids that he dove into the quarry went and killed him, and then you go to the end of the movie. But there's a scene where you see him just sauntering, like normal human beings, just sauntering along the street while Leslie Bibb's cleaning up her house. It makes me happy. I know I changed the subject from werewolves, but this is such a tight 70, 80-minute movie, man. It's so... no, I think I messed up. I said 68. 78 minutes long before credits. It flies by. And it looks great.
Yeah, and it's strong performances by all.
Yeah.
I mean, even the things that you don't think should be good, like 4 girls in a costume party who, if you're seeing this for the first time, they're like, let's just find a man, just find any man, invite him to the party. Like, you're a virgin, we need to solve this. Like, it was very pushy. It was something we normally think
It's
of
like
actually from
American Pie, but with
or
women.
like Animal House.
Yeah,
Or like
exactly.
more like early 80s. Like,
Porky's.
yeah, you just got to get laid. That's the mission. And it's very crass. And they're joking around about it. And of course, we later find out it has nothing to, that's not what's going on. But the dialogue and the performances of those girls, the delivery, the way that they mix it in with the guy who's the clerk at the costume store, as a demonstration of how easy it is to get a date from a guy who sees a pretty girl.
Mm-hmm.
It's all executed really well.
Yeah.
Again, and this is the kind of scene that's normally like the hand waving blow off scene. Like, oh, we're going to see them naked or later. Oh, they're going to die having sex later because, like if Jason was around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it never plays out that way. And they're literally joking about sex, or so we think.
Yeah. Like that guy in Tampa. She said she had some bad Mexican, John. It's like, oh man. Like
she makes a joke about how about excuse me, listeners, if you have delicate sensibilities, but she makes a joke about eating ass.
mm-hmm.
And then the one who said that she had the bad Mexican says, whatever, they all taste the same. And you're thinking of a sex act. And again, she's basically saying it's all meat.
Yeah.
Because she's eating victims. She means like she ate his ass, like she kicked his ass almost. Like it's so it took me so many watches to even catch that.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything in this movie is really rich. All the boy and oh, I can't think of the actor's name. Our principal.
Oh, it's Dylan Baker.
Dylan Baker. His interactions with Charles or Charlie, who was in Bad Santa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then with his own little son and with his neighbor, there's some great, quirky, anxious, critical, manipulative, controlling, scared. He's covering a lot with his few scenes of this character. Like, he's really the most impressive thing about this movie, by the way, in my opinion. He does. And not that Brian Cox doesn't have a great thing. It's just that he's more one note played really well over and over.
He's great at yelling.
Dylan Baker is coming in with more of a symphony of nuance. And again, in a horror anthology, we don't expect this.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Like, we're being spoiled. When I think of a horror anthology, I had this conversation today actually with my coworker. He said, I didn't used to like horror anthologies when I was younger, but I think I like them now. But I also like horror more now. And I said, well, here's the thing, though. Horror anthologies are usually lower budget. They're usually inconsistent. They're usually made by a bunch of different filmmakers. Sometimes it's not even on purpose. Sometimes people literally cherry pick and say, hey, I liked your short film. I'm producing a horror anthology. I want you to be I want the film you already made that I saw to be one of the films.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not like it's architected or crafted on purpose for this. It doesn't have to be. So again, you get inconsistent quality of effects, of writing, of acting, of production value, and sometimes that can take people out of a movie. But when you really are into the genre, a horror anthology means you get to see 3 to 5, or in the case of ABCs of Death, 26 different ideas.
It's a grab bag.
Right, and often the more there are, the more you're seeing the idea they had that would have led to a film instead of the whole film, or you're seeing the scenes that make the finale of the film or cold open of the film instead of the film. And again, it makes people's expectations, I think, of horror anthologies a little different. If you're not a horror fan, I think you are disproportionately more likely to dislike a horror anthology among randomly sampling horror movies. If you are a horror fan, I think that you'll disproportionately like it more, even if the quality is arguably lower in all dimensions, down to writing, direction, everything.
I feel like you're gambling when you watch a horror anthology, and there's kind of a thrill to it because you're like, all right, there's 6 of them, and like 2, you're like, but 1, you're like, whoa, and there's this really interesting roller coaster that comes with it.
And you can say like, yeah, it wasn't that good, but this one short, and now you might know to follow that director. Or at the same time, even if something's not that good, okay, well, if there are 3 stories, did it take you 10 minutes to realize it's not good? You only have 20 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
Are there 5 stories? you only even less. So if you don't like something, you just hang on a little bit, and pretty soon you're gonna shift. So again, like a horror anthology is for again, I think it's for the people who want tasting menus at restaurants.
It's the beer
Right.
sampler. There's 5 IPAs
Right,
you want to
right.
try,
The
so you get
people who
5.
want
Yeah,
flights.
exactly. And you know what I like too is, so even though this one is more tight than your regular anthology, I do like what the director had to say. So I bought the Scream Factory Blu-ray. I listened to all the behind the scenes stuff. I listened to the commentary, and he said that the first one's about like a dad and his kid on Halloween. The second one is about about being a dad, and then there's one with just kids, like teenagers, like younger kids. The other one's about Halloween in your 20s, which is all about parties and hooking up. And if you think about Halloween at college, John, you know how that goes. And then you have Halloween in your twilight years. So he had a dad and his young son for the first one, and then you have teenagers who are alone being bullies, picking on each other. Then you have Halloween in your 20s with werewolves and all that kind of murder and partying, and the outfits that they very distinctly pick out to lure men in. And then then you have the cranky people who, when you were getting candy when you were younger, were always cranky. So I like that there's still a theme to this, but like it never pummels you over the head with the progression of the theme and how it covers 4 distinct age groups. And I
In
like
a
that a
way, a
lot.
fifth age group. Although Leslie Bibb, her death,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, they're like, so I guess they're 30 somethings,
Right.
I guess. So then you kind
Sure.
of have the established 30 somethings who, a little too old for it. They still go out. Yeah, so I guess you do have 5. You have that whole progression. So I'm basically in the Leslie Bibb area without the tape. And I should
Oh,
have.
hold on. Let's not criticize people with the tape.
Yeah.
Okay. Some people enjoy the tape. Some people don't need or want the tape. It's fine. We're not trying to tape judge. We're not tape shaming.
No, no, no. I just love that's just such a weird little wrinkle, isn't it? Like there's a tape, and then that's gonna take hours to put away all of those things in her lawn. And you know what's interesting? I love Sam. Sam's adorable. Sam is amazing. But she blows out a candle and then she starts putting the decorations away. She says, "I hate Halloween," and she gets murdered for it. It's uh yeah, kind of, well, what's funny? She's in the background of a shot, and I don't know if you heard her, but she's like, "You put me in a box. Why'd you put me in a box?"
Yeah, at the parade, right?
Yeah, yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm in a box. But yeah, I mean, they kind of gave her this kind of negative backstory. But yeah, Sam just goes and murders the poor lady while the guy falls asleep upstairs.
Well, I mean, realistically, though, Sam murdered her because Sam watched her blow out the jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, but
And not only that, it was after her husband specifically tried to stop her and warn her. Granted, his explanation was, I don't know, ancient tradition.
yeah,
But
yeah. I think Sam was kind of pissed too from his brawl with Brian Cox. So he's like, I gotta go let out some energy. And then he lights her up with a lollipop that's super sharp. But Sam's weird because he's adorable, but he's also just a straight up murderer. And he's played by the kid who's the peeping Tom in the beginning. So when you see the kid peeping into the
oh yeah, the
changing
little
rooms,
bear kid,
yeah,
the kid in the bear costume.
yeah,
He seemed very young to be so interested in that, by the way.
they called his name's Peeping Tommy. But here's another fact I love about this movie is they shot it in Vancouver, but they shot it in November in Vancouver. So I mean, Vancouver's not exactly Manitoba in winter, but it's still very cold and rainy. But what I found out was that there's no leaves, but they planned on that. So on Halloween, remember they shot it in California, and they didn't have any. They had a couple bags of leaves to throw on the lawn. They had 3 pumpkins. So in this one, they foresaw that coming, so they picked like 300 bags of fallen leaves, and they just had it in their like sets. So they built, they went and they shot on that street. They did exteriors, but they built all of Brian Cox's house on stage. Those backyards are in a stage, and so is the quarry. They look beautiful. But I just love that they kind of didn't Halloween themselves, and they went and had 300 bags, hefty bags of leaves throughout the whole shoot, and that made me kind of happy. That makes me very happy. But yeah, no, it's like a $12 million budget too. I mean, I don't think this budget looks stretched though. Like this is 2007. This was shot in for 12 mil. This looks like a pretty luscious film. It does not look.
I would have assumed a higher budget.
Yeah, if someone told me 25, I would have been like, yeah, that sounds right. But when I heard 12, I went, wow, like that's. But that's why you get pros though, and also too, Bryan Singer produced this, and so that's why Brian Cox was an X-Men too. Anna Paquin was an X-Men. So I wonder if you kind of had that kind of connection as well. Also, Glenn McPherson, a man we know well, shot it. I mean, this is a guy who did all the Resident Evil, the last 3 Resident Evil movies, which we covered. You should go listen to that series. And did you see the bottle of whiskey that Brian Cox is drinking? It's Glenn McPherson, Scotch.
Oh, BC, I didn't know that name.
Yeah. So when I
I
saw
didn't know
Glenn
that name.
McPherson, I'm like, that's really cheeky. That's a whiskey after the director. And that made me really happy. But yeah, I don't know, it's a 12 million budgeted, super tight movie that just looks great. The performances are good. I really liked the two. Like, I thought Monica Delane, who played Janet, and Rochelle Eitz, who played Maria, and Lauren Lee Smith, who played Danielle, the 3 other werewolves, they were good. They were funny. They were like,
Everyone was good.
yeah. But like
It's
they
hard to
added
do that.
they added. There's a scene where Janet walks up to Danielle with some beers, and she like you can tell that Janet's pretty drunk, but she just does this weird face and then like lunges a beer into Danielle's face. It's little moments like that. Like this is a tiny moment, but there's so much personality in this moment. There's more personality in that moment than there is in the entire One Missed Call remake. Like it's
Which I saw recently. It's funny you say that.
it's a quirky little thing. And once again, I'm going back to this. You and I have talked about enough cult classics like that. This is such a cult classic. If you think about Nightmare Before Christmas, that was a hit, but it's PG rated, and I do think it scarred children. Hocus Pocus wasn't exactly a hit, but it's PG rated, so it could live on video. This is one of those like adult cult classics. You're in the know. Like this, I don't know if I'm making sense here, but this can't get reruns on Disney. The DVDs got passed around. Like if you kind of like, I don't know, it felt like a secret club for a while, this film. And it finally got released into a few theaters this year. This year, it finally got released in theaters, which makes me very happy. But yeah, it's just, I keep saying this, but John, man, when I figured out that this movie was 80 minutes with credits, I was so happy because it just zaps by. I watched this 3 times in prep for this episode, and it never felt long or boring, or I kept finding new things. I was still tense in all the right spots. It just, it's just, I don't know. It's a good flick, man. Ernest Scared Stupid's still my favorite, but still, this movie is
It's
beautiful.
also funny. I probably saw the movie before this year. I probably last saw the movie 5, 7, maybe even 10 years ago. And I mean, like start to finish, really sitting and watching it. And I swear, I never realized Brian Cox was the bus driver. I never paid attention to what he was burning.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, the photos from him driving.
Well, the thing is that to me, he was like some like depressed, lonely, maybe war vet, maybe his wife died. He's just angry at the world, become an alcoholic, and he's just burning memories. In other words, like I just was never attentive to what the pictures were. I just saw him in my head. It's almost like there was nothing in the picture. I just knew they were pictures of things that probably had to do with him.
Yeah.
I never registered it. I never did. So when the zombie kids came to his door, the thing is that like you'd say like, oh well, of course they came to his door. He was the bus driver. But in any other horror anthology, that could happen, and it wouldn't matter that he was the bus driver, because most horror anthologies don't have good synthesis, and any links they make are weak.
Mm-hmm.
Like between just to connect 2 stories, if you will. So like to me, I never noticed it until these last couple watches.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know. So
He's great at yelling. His fight with Sam is a lot of fun. I mean, Sam.
He gets into it. Brian Cox gets into that.
Yeah.
He's physically in it, and there were a lot of shots where I'm like, okay, that's probably a stunt double, and then there are others where I'm like, that's one shot, that's him. He is wrestling. He's not wrestling, Mark, because when you're acting, you can wrestle. He is straight up like he might have been drunk for the shot. He is wrestling sometimes, like a doll.
I love that you say that. Brian Cox, he's not a wrestler, but he will wrestle.
He'll scrap the shit out of you, is what he'll do. He's a scrapper.
Man, yeah, I don't see Brian Cox getting a single leg and taking somebody down. I see him, grabbing onto a leg and biting it, and then falling on top of a guy.
Right.
But yeah, it's such a fun fight scene though. And what exactly are Sam's powers? Doors open and close for him. He can get 100 jack-o'-lanterns set up in a minute. He can decorate an entire wall in minutes.
That was crazy. That was a lot of writing.
Yeah, but since he can, it can. I don't know. Sam's a spirit who can open and close doors with telepathy.
He can climb on ceilings.
Climb on ceilings. So he clearly didn't write all that stuff in the room. Maybe he had some magic markers that did it.
Well, but it was all Halloween themed. So maybe it's like
A
if
template.
it is an activity in the spirit of Halloween, he has that power. Or I'd almost like to think it's less that he decides it and more that Halloween itself around him bends conveniently to not even his will, bends conveniently to his actions.
So like all those jack-o'-lanterns, he just conjured them, would you say?
Not even on purpose. He was coming, and so Halloween as an entity late cast them there.
See,
And he went to hide under the bed, and Halloween, as if a god, cast the walls strewn with this writing. Because he doesn't seem to me such a thoughtful and intuitive entity.
Very reactive.
He's haphazard and childish
Mm-hmm.
and impulsive.
And grabs
right?
candy.
Right. He goes to stab somebody, accidentally stabs a candy bar, and thinks, "Oh, you gave me a treat."
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think he has the cognitive potential to have done these things, at least in such an organized way. I feel like he is maybe just a manifestation that Halloween has placed there, and it has some sentience. I don't know. It's an interesting notion, but of course, and sometimes things are just because it would be fun in the movie. But I like to think that there's a greater force, and of course, if he wasn't going to attack Leslie Bibb prior to her blowing out the candle, there are cosmic rules perhaps that he's following.
Oh, he has to?
Well, or not necessarily he has to attack her, but he wouldn't have chosen her had the jack-o'-lantern remain lit.
Yeah, right place, wrong place, wrong place, right time, I guess. Wrong place, wrong time for Leslie Bibb right there.
Leslie Bibb, right.
But he also shows up for the kids when they are, playing the prank on the girl. He also shows up during the werewolf attack. No one goes after him as well during that werewolf attack. So the little bugger can move, but it doesn't matter. It's just so cute and deadly and murderous and almost sort of pure, but in a I'll kill you way, which is an interesting kind of take on the character.
Innocent yet homicidal.
Yeah, kind of like the kid from Child's Play when he slices him. I could have swore Brian Cox got his Achilles ripped. I don't think he's walking after that.
He pulled a Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, exactly.
Pet Cemetery on him, yeah.
But it's still fun, man. It's just a little maniac, a little Halloween mascot that I think now is partly ingrained. I don't think Halloween is. I'm sorry, Trick or Treat is on the level of Hocus Pocus, or on the level of. I mean, actually, if you look at the Blu-ray sales of Hocus Pocus, my gosh, that movie's such a cult classic. But yeah, that or a Halloween. But do you think Trick or Treat is a? I feel like Halloween is crossed over to the mainstream. Hocus Pocus is crossed over to the mainstream. Trick or Treat is a cult classic staple for horror fans.
Yeah, it's rated R.
There's nudity, there's violence, there's kids.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. It's not in the same category as the aforementioned two.
It's kind of amazing it got made. This is a movie with a very light tone to it. A kid is poisoned, pukes chocolate, and it's sort of played for a laugh.
Okay, so I watched this with my girlfriend. I watched it with Sarah, and when that scene happened, she's not into horror movies, but she enjoys the funny horror. She enjoys horror comedy, right? Like Cabin in the Woods,
yeah.
Tucker and Dale, whatever. But when the vomiting happened, she was like, "Oh my god, oh!" She's looking away. I'm like, "Why are you covering?" She's like, "Oh my god, no! I am going to." It made her want to throw up, or not want to. It made her fear that she would impulsively throw up.
Oh wow!
Because that was a lot of that was so much vomit, Mark. It was so much vomit. That was you think about oh, that was a lot of vomit in Pitch Perfect, and by volume it was more, but not by number of convulsions. That kid just kept heaving that stuff out, and the principal is literally like narrating about it as it's like, man, that's
Yeah.
you had a lot of candy tonight.
And he's just like, it's a chocolate fountain out of that child's
so
mouth.
gross.
And,
So
and
gross.
I like that you brought up Pitch Perfect, because that's like a CGI vomit explosion. This seems more real, but just a lot of chocolate. And
So much.
I remember not seeing it coming because, Dylan Baker, there is some menace to him. But yeah, when that kid just dies, you're like, what is happening? And then when his son is going to carve a skull, that kid, what are the cops going to find when they go to Steven's house? Because he's dead. They're going to show up to that house. Brian Cox is going to be ripped apart. They'll probably find the grave in his backyard since it's so new. And then that head's still got to be around.
And the kid is wearing his shirt with the blood of one of the victims on it.
This town is going to be... okay. On one block, Leslie Bibb is murdered. And then Brian Cox is murdered. Children are murdered and buried. They're going to find all those bodies at that campground. This town is going to be in a world of it. Oh, the 3 kids died in the quarry. This is
that party, the party in the woods.
Oh, the party. Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot of death there. The party in the woods. Yeah, there's the dead girl at the parade.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. From the fake vampire attack. This town is never going to be the same, John. They're going to be.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Imagine being in a small town and all of that happening.
It's a lot.
And imagine if someone went werewolves. Like, your whole worldview is going to change. John, I have a question. You're out. You're celebrating. You and Sarah are celebrating. And you find out that werewolves, Halloween goblins, or spirits, and just, zombies are around. Aside from survival, let's say you're safe. Like, you're never going to be the same again. Because this just opened up a whole Pandora's box of like things you never thought would happen. Like, what's your first thought, John? What's in your head right now?
I don't know, man. I feel like unless I see a werewolf, though.
You see it.
I saw it.
Yeah. No, this is all factual. So you're on a Ferris wheel. You're on the very top.
I'm watching it happen. I'm watching the chaos transpire.
You're safe. A helicopter's coming. It's going to pick the 2 of you up, right? For some reason, it's a kind of a slippery night. No monsters can climb up the Ferris wheel. So you 2 are safe, right?
Zombies, terrible climbers.
Exactly. The night monkey from Spider-Man Far From Home comes and saves you. Then you realize Spider-Man's alive. But you see it all. You see the transformations. You see the reincarnate. You see the reanimations. You see the little spirit running around stabbing people. What's going on in your head?
I think a lot of reevaluating would be happening, Mark. I really don't know. I don't even think I could. I guess my first thought, though, would be, on what scale is this?
Yeah.
Is this
isolated
here?
Incident? It's an isolated incident.
Someone crack open a gate to hell or some other dimension, or there's some wizardly entity conjuring or creating these things here.
This isn't Dawn of the Dead that becomes Land of the Dead, which becomes Diary of the Dead, or which becomes Survival of the Dead. This is just an isolated incident. This is Goosebumps.
Yeah. So again, though, I'd be concerned though about stragglers, and then before you know it, it turns into Blade, where there's an underground vampire community. I'd certainly be very wary. But I guess if it was truly an isolated incident, and we are led to believe on the news that it was
a gas leak,
that it was fully resolved, it was a gas leak, that it was fully resolved, I'd probably go about my regular life. It's just that when I see something weird, now I'm going to question it differently.
But knowing that there's monsters, like how would and then reanimated corpses and like deadly spirits that come out during Halloween, like I think, man, that would just open up so many doors for me, John. It was just like, spirits exist, werewolves exist. Yeah, I would be very paranoid. But like you said, if let's say a werewolf got rabies, like let's say a raccoon, which I love raccoons, was rabid and it bit a werewolf, a person, and then that person a full moon's the following night. So when they turn into a werewolf, they can't have control, like the people from Harry Potter, and they go off on a feral werewolf murder spree because they were bitten by a rabid raccoon.
I mean, sure. I don't know how to react to that.
I guess then I would be like, oh, so they can control it. It's cool. That one just got bit by something that was rabid. So I'm not too worried because they're under control of it. If it's Benicio del Toro's Wolfman, I'm running. Because your head.
Look, okay, first off, in a world where there are werewolves who can control, now I'm not saying if I go to them, they're not going to make anything but dinner out of me. But I'd be a little intrigued to find out some of the particulars to see if I want to get on the wait list.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, so
right?
Yeah, you're not immortal. You can live a normal life. This isn't Highlander. There's no Queen soundtrack. You can live a normal life, but every once in a while you can become a werewolf, and you throw chairs like Anthony Hopkins.
Like if you can just do that, well, you see these girls, they do this every Halloween. It's not a full moon every Halloween, so they're arguably just doing it willy-nilly as they please.
So these are completely different werewolves.
Well, I'm just saying, unless just by coincidence, this Halloween and the previous 2 Halloweens for them all happen to be full moons, which is not impossible, right? Mm-hmm. It might not even be improbable, but it is not likely.
It was in Tampa.
Well, that was 2 years ago, I remember, because last year we were in Austin and I had that bad Mexican.
Yeah. Oh man. Oh gosh.
But yeah, so they don't necessarily require. Well, we are not given evidence to suggest that they require a full moon.
Yeah. Okay. So then that raises more questions.
So then it might even be like at that point more in the vein of why can't I think right now? Kate Beckinsale.
Underworld. They can just change whenever they want.
Right. They can just induce it.
Yeah.
Like it's a choice. And so if that's the case, again, I'm going to be intrigued. Like what? You're on vacation. Someone mugs you. Werewolf.
You have to rip your skin off, though.
Yeah, but the thing is that they could have a gun on you, and you say, "Oh, well, they can still shoot you or something," and there's no silver nonsense. Like you don't need to. It doesn't need to be silver in our reality. But at the same time, they're just going to sit there and be like, "What is happening?" Or run because it freaks them out. I think that shooting the weird thing that's happening in front of you is not the probable result. I think that they are going to panic. I think that they are going to run. By the way, are we tougher in werewolf form? I feel like we're tougher in werewolf
You're Anthony
form,
Hopkins.
Right? So it might be easier to take that bullet anyway.
Yeah, bullets are basically like a flick to the forehead.
Right, but I don't want to go with the it needs to be silver thing, right? I want to go more like where like it has to be silver to hurt them.
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Because like I don't want to go dog soldiers where you can literally stab a sword through its thorax and it's just like fine, like nothing happened.
Yeah. So you don't want to be that werewolf?
No. I'm saying that's silly.
Oh. Yeah, that's just a fun action horror movie. No, this is the traditional rules.
It's just that you have to have silver to kill them.
Yeah.
So I'm not killable without silver.
Yeah.
As a werewolf.
Listen, you could have an anvil land on you and you'd be fine. I don't know why.
Regenerate.
Yeah. But it's just if silver pops you, boom, in an organ that could take you out.
Okay, just be clear. Okay, now you're selling me. I want to be that werewolf.
So if you're wearing a silver necklace, that's not going to kill you. If someone scratches your arm with silver, you're fine. But if it hits you in the head or heart, yeah, you're toast.
If it's a lethal blow, it's really lethal.
Yeah. So you should see John's face right now, y'all. John's sitting here going, like, he would really do it. He would love it. And I know this is way off the trail of Trick or Treat, but I just remember watching this and going, like, this town is going to be... There's gonna be a lot of need for catharsis in this town after this night because oofta. And you see how cold everybody was? Oh my gosh! Imagine shooting in November, December. Yeah, in
Vancouver though, it's mild weather though.
But still,
it's cold.
I shot during the winter in Georgia and it was 17 degrees for 3 days, and then we went inside a warehouse and it was they kept it in like a refrigerator, so it's cold for anybody. So like you're out in that weather and it's raining. But I heard out there they have great systems to keep rain out because it just rains in Vancouver all the time. So I heard there's the tarps that they have are wonderful. They just have to ADR everything because it's always raining.
I was there in November for a conference a few years ago, and now granted I'm a big heavy person, but it's harder for me to get cold. But like when I would go out to dinner with friends, we'd walk like up to a quarter mile outside at night in November in Vancouver, and I just have a button-up shirt and a vest. And when I say a vest, I don't mean like a coat vest. I mean like part of a three-piece suit vest. I'd be cool. It would be cold. I'd put my hands in my pocket for half the walk. But
Yeah,
like,
but all night, not walking, standing around on a film set. That's
okay,
cool. Yeah.
like that would get cold. I would get
Yeah,
cold.
yeah. I mean, I've stood around on so many. Oh, so let's see. Average weather in Vancouver in October, the high's 57, low 47. Weather averages. So yeah,
That's only a 10-degree drop though.
Yeah, that's not bad.
47, that's not bad.
Still, with the raining, the humidity, it's not dry heat.
The mistiness just laying the cold on you in sheets.
I just want to be out there to see it work because I like the tarps that they have. I heard they have special tarps to keep rain because it just rains. Like if you work in Vancouver, you can't just go. Like I assume it's almost working like Florida because there's always showers that pop by in Florida. You're always going to have an afternoon shower, so you'll never shoot if you're worried about rain. So you just got to deal with it. So it'd be fun to see what they got out there in Vancouver, how that sets up. But once again, man, just going out there, $12 million, making this movie, bringing in the cast they do. I love the one-note joke about the werewolves. I love Dylan Baker, like Brian Cox and his yelling and his Glenn McPherson whiskey. The mean bullies just getting torn up. The fun rock quarry, like it's just a cool little movie. It's just a fun, gnarly. Could this have worked as a PG or PG-13, or do you think it need to be R?
I don't think I'd enjoy it then. I think it. First off, I mean, no. Yeah. I'm trying to rationalize it in my head, and when I think of some of the things, it's like, well, the nudity is a non-factor. If you took out the nudity, I don't think that, whatever. That's not changing it from R. The R is from very different factors, and when I think about it, I feel like I love those things. None of it strikes me as gratuitous.
No. Well, the nudity didn't strike you as gratuitous?
No. I said you could eliminate the nudity.
Yeah.
It's still going to be R. So, but then, like after that, though, after you eliminate the nudity, what's gratuitous about this movie? Like, I mean, you can say that's a lot of vomit, but I mean, it actually is coming with dialogue. It's showing you about your principal character. It gives you time to see. Here's the other thing: if it's brief vomit, it gives you time to see that he's not at all surprised at what's happening.
He's done it before. This is a method he's tested.
Instead of it being after, he's collecting a dead body. Like, I like those things. The level of violence with the Brian Cox and Sam interaction. That's the thing is with that, it's less about the violence itself and more about, I think, the meanness of the violence, like the Achilles cut.
And the Home Alone staircase.
Right, the Home Alone silly. God, him screaming when he had the glass in his hand. He was so in it.
Cox can yell, man. Cox is a yeller. And also, those kids get killed on the bus, too. So those children get murdered.
We don't see them get murdered.
I guess, I wonder if ratings boards, if it's the idea. So I think when ratings are going, yes, we don't see those children specifically get murdered, but they die. Everyone watching this knows they die.
We know that it's a bunch of like mentally handicapped kids as well. So, but again, that serves the story well.
Mm-hmm.
So I like these things. None of it seems over the top for the sake of being over the top. Anything that anyone wants to say is over the top strikes me as very appropriate to a consistent tone throughout the movie.
I think that's the most important part is the consistent tone. You never get this levels of meanness. Like it's very, if there's like I don't know, like an audio track gauging the peaks and highs of it, it would be quite, it would plateau pretty good. Like it wouldn't be like high highs and low lows. Like it's pretty static film. Like it stays on the same wavelength the entire time.
I guess I'd have to really think about it hard, but I don't think so. I think that maybe theoretically it could work to adjust certain things to make it PG-13. But I think at that point, you're taking something that works so well, and once you start suggesting changes, we just wander into the realm of what happens when studios and producers get too involved. And even if you give the control to Michael Dougherty as to how to make these changes or rewrites. You're still changing things from what was his vision to something that is quite possibly not his, and then you can create inconsistency in delivery and quality and how things seem to fit together nicely for synthesis of story. I think that you wander into a mild, not so horrible minefield of risks and quality. And while I realize studios do that routinely and they're happy to do it and they know they're going to make money doing it, that doesn't make quality movies.
No, and it does make it very fragmented, and it never feels organic. And you got to have the kid puking. You got to have Dylan Baker murdering the child in the backyard. You need to have the bus. Like and when I say need, this is still quite a dangerous movie, and I think that's the allure of it to many people. It doesn't pull its punches too much, but it has such a gleeful vibe about it, and so if you take those away from each other, it's just going to feel flat. Like, you need to have that wicked sense of humor to make this movie work. Now, I know, like, when they were talking during the commentary, they had to get rid of the banana outfit or the hot dog outfit. I saw, who, BFing somebody. Like, they had to redub that line for Airplanes.
Oh God, yeah. That's right. The kids saying that. That was so funny. And the swingers party.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I totally get why you would have to redo that. But no, you need, this is one of those movies where you can't, I was talking with Johnny Nunn. We did a episode about a movie called Bad Lieutenant. That's a movie that you can't water down.
That's the original, right?
Yeah,
not the remake.
No, the original. Yeah.
Harvey Keitel.
Yeah, okay. You can't water that down. It needs to be that nasty. It needs to take you there because that's the whole point of the movie. So I think Trick or Treat, it works best as what the original vision is. A R-rated, semi-gratuitous, violent, gleeful, fun romp that gives Halloween fans a mascot. So yeah, I think it works best. And I almost think, I'm not going to tell anybody who produced this movie this, but the fact that it didn't get released for 2 years and the fact that it grew word of mouth, I think that almost helped it. Sometimes a movie gets released in theaters, it tanks, critics like it, people don't really think about it. But this is a movie that got handed or was talked to or was talked about on boards. And I think that's what made it popular. And then that helped fuel the fandom. So it took 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, 15 years. But I think it's at a great spot now because of those fans who saw it in 07, who cheered. Does that make sense? Like, it's had such a long lifespan where so many movies get like Smile. I like Smile. It was fine. But it's not going to have the life of Trick or Treat, if that makes sense. I mean, it made a lot more money. I'm sure that people would rather take that. But that's just my thought. Like, I just like it because it's funky, it's weird, it's fun, and Sam's adorable. Even though Sam's a murderer. But Sam's still adorable. Yeah.
I mean, I think Sam's just an entity, though, that's doing his cosmic calling.
Yeah. But I love how it's just, you don't see this adorable little character, and then he just kills a woman kills Leslie Bibb, and blood explodes everywhere. Megan was watching this, and during the puking part, like you talked about with Sarah, and then during the part when he's kicking the kid in the back in the grave, Megan's like, oh my gosh, this is child murder. And I guess you and I have forgotten about how many times we've seen it, and also you and I watch a lot of
other movies too. Yeah.
And that to us, to me, it's funny because they're able to balance it. It's when Pulp Fiction got made and there's all those Pulp Fiction imitators that never felt organic. This movie pulls off that violence by still feeling quite organic because of the tone.
It's funny. So I had a thought earlier and I didn't say it, but you said the Pulp Fiction movies and the Pulp Fiction and then the people who tried to emulate it. When the people are trying to emulate it, they're like, okay, what would be really shocking? Whereas I think Quentin Tarantino was just like, and then this happens. This is what I think would happen next.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I feel would happen next. This is what I think this character would do. Other people are like, okay, what can this character do? What can happen that's going to blow people's minds? How do we do that? This movie always feels like it's doing what Michael Dougherty felt like these characters would do and said what these characters would say. It actually never really feels like it's trying to shock us for the sake of shocking us. It feels like, if anything, maybe the degree of vomit. But I quite enjoyed that. And again, because the dialogue that happens during it's not just silly gratuitous. It's just a little bit. But like, I don't think he was sitting there thinking, oh yeah, we're going to show them more vomit than anyone's ever seen. No, I think he thought, no. So he vomits, and while he's vomiting, the guy is saying these things. And then I think it's more likely that he realized that I want him to say all these things, and for him to get to say all these things with the calm demeanor I want him to say, the kid needs to vomit more. You know what I mean? I think that his character building built the vomit, not the vomit built the character building.
It's like, what would be gross here? No, this is built into the script and it works. Right. No, that's perfect. I love that you say that. And yeah, it just works. It feels organic. It's a lot of fun. And I have a question for you, John. This is really random, but you are gonna watch three horror movies on Halloween.
Oh dear.
In your head, you don't have to be cool. You don't have to be awesome. You don't have to pick pretentiously. What are like the first 3 movies you would just put on if you were asked right now?
Okay, 2 of them come easy. For some reason, I can't conjure a third.
All right, so what's the first 2?
Poltergeist, Evil Dead 2.
Ooh.
One that's got a lot of heart and one that's just a slapstick thrill ride.
Oh man, that really is.
A third I could say a lot of things. I don't know why a third doesn't really hit me hard, but I mean, Trick or Treat, Tales from the Dark Side, Cabin in the Woods. I mean, I feel like I could go a lot of directions for a third, but those for The Conjuring, the original The Conjuring. I feel like I could go Bram Stoker's Dracula. Actually, I suggested that we watch leading up to Halloween, so we're going to watch that soon.
Beautiful movie.
But even though that doesn't strike me as Halloween-y, for Halloween-y, you know what I'd do instead? Fright Night or Fright Night 2.
Yeah, those
are both of them back to back. I'd treat them as one thing.
Ooh, you just added a wild card. So right now, I would do Ernest Scared Stupid. I would do The Guest.
That's an interesting Halloween choice.
Yeah, and it's a Halloween movie, which is kind of nice. And then either Werewolves Within or the Fright Night remake, because I love both of those. Because this is your third movie, so I don't want anything heavy. So I just want to have something I can kick back and enjoy. So Ernest Scared Stupid. Oh, that sounds like fun. I love this. The Guest and Werewolves Within, because Megan loves Werewolves Within. So we'll do that. That's a fun. I like it. And The Guest is hilarious. I love the final line. So mine would
be Evil Dead 2, Poltergeist, and do I have to pick one of the 2 Fright Nights?
Yep. John just blinked about 8 times. He almost short-circuited.
Okay, yeah, the original Fright Night. But Fright Night 2, though, has such diversity to it. It's really a good choice on its own for different reasons. A little zanier.
Oh, yeah.
So Evil Dead 2, Poltergeist, 1985 Fright Night.
Ooh. Well, either way, I like both of them. Both are really good. This is fun. John, I asked you some tough questions tonight. You were blinking tough. You were thinking. You've become a werewolf.
I was actually having a very subtle micro seizure.
Hey, John, where can people find you before we get out of here?
Boy, if you Google John's Horror Corner, you'll probably find my Instagram, my Twitter, even though that's MFF Horror Corner. It's named John's Horror Corner. And if you go to Movies, Films, and Flicks, you'll see a little tab at the top right of that page next to podcast that says John's Horror Corner. And that's my little lair, is that tab.
Your Goblin Village.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, this was great, man. And thanks for doing this episode with me. And we didn't have much notice, but we might as well. I mean, this is a Halloween staple. We're rarely ever topical here at Movies, Films, and Flicks, but I felt like being topical this year. So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, this is a delightful film. And if somehow someone's listening who's probably heard of this movie, I don't know why you'd listen to this if you haven't at least heard of the movie, right? But it's probably heard of the movie and never got around to it. This is a hard recommend. And by the way, this is the director of Krampus and Godzilla King of the Monsters. So if you liked either of those movies, this is where he really got started.
Man, I like this one so much more than Krampus. I like Krampus, but Krampus is so cynical, which I understand because of the consumerism of Christmas, but it's living in that world of Krampus is just so oppressive to me.
I love that movie, but I will call it a whole tier below Not just like, oh, Trick or Treat is better, a whole tier below. But I laugh a lot every time I watch Krampus, and I enjoy watching that giant Krampus leaping from building to
Yeah, yeah,
building
yeah.
when the daughter is running outside. I love seeing
Visually,
the
it's
different
rich.
toy monster iterations. And I love the cast and how David Koechner and his family are just a bunch of shits.
They're like the Randy Quaid's from
Right,
yeah,
exactly that. Yes, yes.
cleaning out
Just
her shitter and their
but but
shits.
but like a meaner,
Yeah,
a less loving version.
it's a super cynical movie, man. But it's
It, it
very,
it
it's
it
very,
truly
it's
is.
very visually striking. So I dig it. But I mean, that's the whole tone is cynical. So I can't fault the movie for its tone, and I can't fault it for having a consistent tone. I guess the tone just didn't work for me, if that makes sense. But I appreciate it for yeah, there we go. But yeah, man, this was good. Thank you for joining me, John.
Absolutely.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for John Levingood, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.